The PA system, or public address system, is used in any public venue that requires an announcer to be sufficiently audible at a distance or over a large area.
Hi everybody, welcome to my master class on PA basics and setup. In today's course, I'm going to explain to you the various components of the system, the mixer, the speakers, the cables, the mics and the mic stands. And then I'm going to walk you through setting up our School of Rock PA system. But first, I got to break it down real quick.
Basically, it all started with the megaphone. From the ancient Greeks and on into the 19th century, the megaphone was the PA system of choice. Then in the late 1920s to 30s, the first loud, powerful amplifier and speaker systems were introduced. Here are some early examples of concert PA systems. The Beatles at Shea Stadium in 1966. The Grateful Dead and their Wall of Sound. The Festival Stage of Woodstock.
Whew! Is that fast enough? Okay, so let's talk about our cabling. I have here on the floor a microphone cable that needs to be wrapped and put away. So let's talk about how to do that appropriately and correctly. So your cord is all run about, sometimes it's in knots. You want to get all those knots out so that there's nothing, it's just a nice single cable there. And then you're going to just kind of roll it as you go. So we don't want to do this, okay? This is bad. Don't try not to do this. It's not the worst in the world, but it's still not good. Because what happens when you're doing that is as you're wrapping it around your elbow, all the wires inside might have a tendency to twist as you're doing that, and then they'll break somewhere in the cable line, or they'll break at the head connection, and then you don't have a working cable. And it becomes more than the expense involved, and these things are expensive. You know, it's like anywhere from $20 to $60 depending on the length of the cable. A good 25 to 50 foot cable is going to cost you around $60. They're pretty expensive. So not only is it an expense, but if you have a bad cable and you need that cable for your gig and it's broken and it's 9, 10 o'clock at night and it's too late to go to the music store and get another one, then you're out of luck. You're not going to be able to use that mic cable, and that means you might be down an instrument or something. There might be something that you're not able to mic. So we're going to talk about the correct way to wrap your cord so that it'll last as long as possible. So again, the wrapping around the elbow, not a good thing, and you want to just be careful of the wires themselves getting all twisted up, right? So we don't want to do this kind of thing either. This can work too, but this becomes a mess, you know, when you're trying to take it apart. So the best, most effective, and safest way to wrap your cables up is to take your connector and you're going to start rolling it in your thumb. You want to roll it in your thumb as you're wrapping it. So as I'm bringing it around into a loop, I'm also rolling with my thumb here so that I can continue a nice loop, rolling it around. It's not getting kinked, you see? There we go. Maybe take some of the twist out. It's best if you can like walk the cord out long so it's not all twisted and wrapped. That'll take more of the kink out. What you don't want is a bunch of kinks in your cord. So I'm twisting every time I'm rolling around. I keep on twisting it through my fingers so that it lays in place. Right? Almost done. Very nice. See how nice and smooth that is? It's not all kinked and twisted. And then there's two different schools of thoughts on this. I like to make the connection here, especially when you start stacking a bunch of these and they don't get all mixed together. It's also best to put a cable tie on this, because even though it's connected, sometimes they'll start getting split like that in the box, and then you pull out 10 of these. And even though they're connected and separated like that, they still get all twisted together. And then when you're trying to take them apart, you got 4, 5, 6, 10 cords. They're all, it's like spaghetti, and it's really frustrating. So it's best to get it nice and wrapped like this, and then take a cable tie or a twist tie or any, whatever you can use to tie it off so it's nice and separate. And then when you're digging all your cables out of your box, you just grab one at a time, and then you lay it out, and you're ready to roll. Now let's talk about the mic cord and the microphone and how to connect it. I'm going to pull this apart. In the picture, you saw that we have 2 different connector types. They slide in together, 3 prongs, 3 holes. Now, obviously, you don't plug, a cable into itself, but I need a microphone. Here's one. So, the microphone. So you take your mic cable and you plug it in there. So we have 3 prongs, 3 holes. Line them up, and then the grooves will line up too. And then you push it in. I don't know if you heard that, but this little thing right here, that locks. So if you want to take it off, you got to press that button in right there to unlock it so that you can pull the connection out. Okay? Listen for the click. I don't know if you got that or not. Okay, and that is how you plug your mic in. Okay, so when you arrive at your club, venue, theater, wherever you're playing, and you are responsible as the act, if you're responsible for bringing the PA system, you're probably going to want to unload your gear into the club. A lot of times we'll put stage gear, what we call backline, up first, so the guitar amps and the drums and stuff like that. And then we'll start setting up the PA. So essentially you have your load in, where everything comes into the room. You try to disperse it so you're not putting stuff in the way of other stuff. Sometimes the rooms are small and it becomes very difficult. And when it's a situation like that, I personally like to bring in some of the stuff, get it set up, and then bring in some more stuff so there's not stuff laying all over the place. But that's just me. Other bands just bring everything in and then it's just a scene. So once you get everything brought in, you want to start, like I said, setting up your backline, getting that out of your way, because then you're going to set up your PA and start running your mics and stuff like that to mic your drums and your guitars and all that stuff. So you want them set into place so that when you start setting up your PA, you can run all your cabling to those different and various places, instead of having the cable and the microphone and everything set up. And then you got to figure out, well, I got to move this, I can put my guitar amp. That's the best way to work. Sometimes, if the PA is supplied and it's already set up, you'll go in there and you'll just have to set up, and then they'll move things around for you. So when you get into the club, you got everything in, then you're going to start setting up your speakers and your mixer board first. The 2 big items. Get them into place, get them set up, and then we're going to start running our cable. Okay, so let's talk about that real quick. First of all, let me get one of our stereo speaker stands right there. This is kind of a new thing. I mean, back in the day, speakers used to basically stack on themselves, and they weren't on a speaker stand generally until systems got smaller and they could handle that kind of thing. But it started out with a big giant, what we called subwoofer or bass bin on the bottom, and then we'd stack a mid-range on top of that, and then there'd usually be a horn, or even smaller speakers, and then a horn on top of that, and the horn would handle the super highs, and then the bass bin, the guy down here on the bottom, and they still have subs, they call them now, but the bass bin would handle the low end. And now they've got these things called subs, which actually, it's not even a distinct signal. Like if you just listen to a sub speaker, it just sounds like boom, 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 boom. It doesn't have any distinction. It's really only there to add that thud to the room, that kind of pounding you feel in your chest, because it's just all that that low end frequency kind of pushing air through the room, and that's basically what a sub cabinet does, is push air. All right, so, but for our speakers, we have small speaker stand mounted speakers, really no sub involved. With all of these stands that we have nowadays, speaker stands, mic stands, light stands, a lot of this stuff is made out of plastic now, which it didn't used to be. So you gotta kind of be, careful with them, because again, you don't want this stuff to break. And again, more than the expense is the inconvenience of not having it when you need it. So let's just break down our stand here, a couple of things. So we have our tightening screw right here, which allows us to adjust the height of our stand. So be careful when you unscrew these things that you don't unscrew it too much, because then what happens is these things fall off. Sometimes they have a backer nut on the other side, depending on what it is, and if you just unscrew it completely, that backer nut falls off, and now you've lost a backer nut. And so that means that you can't tighten this anymore, because the nut that it tightens into has fallen on the floor and rolled under a cabinet, and it's a black thing on a black carpet in a black room, and you're never gonna find it. So be careful of that. All right, so I've unscrewed this, and there's also this little plug or peg, whatever you want to call it, right here that goes into these various holes, height holes, and that's a safety net right there. It's probably best to use that when you can. These speakers have a good amount of weight to them, and again, these little screw connections, they're not so great anymore because it's plastic on plastic, and the metal's not even that strong either. It tends to strip too if you're not careful. So you want to have this fail-safe of this little plug here so that there's no way that this can fall down. You don't want to be in the middle of a performance and all of a sudden your speaker just goes boom and falls because this thing isn't holding tight enough. So it goes, there's several holes. I'm going to loosen this. You pull this out, it can go up, so you see all these different holes, whatever level you want it in. Go back to the original hole it was at. Put this in. It's probably best if you put it in before you go all the way down. Let's try to get this. There we go. And then tighten it back up. Don't over tighten either. Tight is tight. That's good. All right. And so then that one is for the height adjustment, and this one here is going to open the legs of the tripod. And again, not all the way, just enough to loosen it, right? And then you're just gotta, and depending on how much room you have, clearly, obviously, the more spread apart the legs are, the more balance you have, the more sturdy it is, and that's great and all, but again, we're gonna find that space is limited more often than not. So you might wanna lift it up, take a little less leg space, if you can. Of course, as always, don't compromise safety for convenience. Okay, so we have our speaker set up, like so. Now, I'm going to put a speaker on it. Watch me struggle. It's usually best to get a buddy to help you out with this. But as you see here, we have a hole in the bottom of the speaker. And a matter of fact, I think I'm going to do this a smart way. Let me put it down. This way you're not trying to lift it up and put it on the hole and dropping anything. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the speaker on the floor. Yep. Like so. And then I'll take the speaker stand and I will insert it. This is much easier. Got to get these cables out of the way. Again, easier with a buddy. And then lift it into place. There we go. And you have your speaker on its stand. Now you've got your speakers set up and your mixer board in place. So everything is in place and ready to roll. I think probably the next thing that I would do is start running our power. So extension cords if you need them, and getting everything powered up and plugged in. So let's talk about our power cord real quick. This is your basic power cord for amps, mixers, speakers, everything nowadays. It's also the same kind of connection as a computer cable. So if you lose one of these or something like that and you need a replacement, you can just use one from a computer. They're pretty universal. They work for all amps. It's just a basic plug. All right. So this is the end that plugs into your equipment, speaker, mixer, whatever it might be. And of course, obviously, we know what this plugs into. All right, so I'm gonna plug everything in, get it rolling real quick. For this, I'm probably gonna have to take the camera off of the stand and kind of walk it around as I go. So try not to get too dizzy. Also, quick thought on these cables. They're a lot thicker than speaker cables, and it's also a different concept. You know, this is an electrical current thing. It's not passing sound. It's shielded. Again, you still don't want to wrap and twist these, but they don't wrap into a nice loop like the other cables do. So doing this kind of thing with these is kind of your only option. And once again, you know, it's always best to tie cables off so that they're not floating around in a bin somewhere getting tangled into a gigantic spaghetti mess, because pulling that apart is extremely frustrating, especially when you're kind of in a hurry to get everything set up so you can get a sound check and then play your gig. So, you know, take some of the stress out of it by not having to deal with spaghetti. You're going to plug your power cable into that little connector right there. So, all right, take this end, plug it in, plug it in, and then all you have to do is plug your plug in, and your speaker is powered. All right. So our power is right there. Blue light is on and blinking for our Bluetooth pairing. So this speaker is up and running and ready to go. It's always best to have your volumes down. Here's your master volume right there. It's your overall volume. These are volumes for each channel. We'll go over that in a little bit. So keep everything down just so that you don't have any nasty surprises. All right, the other one. Now let's go over to the mixing board and we'll plug that in as well. So we're looking for the same connection on our board here. It's going to be in the back. Do we see that? All right, so it plugs in right there. I think you have to have it upside down. 3 prongs to 3 prongs, and there you go. All right, so now our board is powered up. Okay, I can turn it on now because it's not plugged into the speakers. But let's keep in mind the axiom: board makes the pop. Okay, so what that means is when you turn on the board, if it's hooked up to a speaker and the speaker is turned on, it's going to send a pop signal sound through the speakers, and that's not a great thing. I mean, it's not going to blow the speaker up immediately, or it's just not a good habit to get into. You really don't want the speaker to come on and immediately pop, because it could blow the speaker. All right, so I'm going to turn it on now because, like I said, it's not hooked up. Just want you to see that we got power, and we don't, because I have to turn on the power strip. And then you can turn on the power to your PA. And there's our power signal right there. Okay, so now I've got everything in place and I've got everything powered up. I haven't turned on the power yet, but everything's plugged in and tested, and the electricity is working, all our plugs are working, everything's working. We have AC, we have alternating current, we have power. So we can turn everything on, but we want to run our cabling first before we start turning everything on. We don't want to get you can get a shock, you know, and stuff like that. So we don't need to turn the PA on yet. We can start running our cabling. So we're going to do that first, right? First thing we're going to do is we're going to run our speaker cable. Now, back in the day, I keep on saying that, but it's true. It used to be that we would have a mixing board, and then the mixing board would send its signal to what was called a power amp, or several power amps, depending on the size of the concert. And what that would do is that it would take your signal from the mixer of the mixed sound, and it would feed it to that amplifier, and it would give it more volume and more power. And the power amp would then send that signal to your speakers, and then the power amp would be the driving force. It would drive that through your speakers. Now, that was old technology. Speakers used to be extremely heavy. They would be made out of really hard wood, just because a hardwood speaker cabinet is going to resonate better. And the speakers were usually big with giant magnets on them. And the whole thing was just extraordinarily heavy. So they couldn't have, nowadays we have powered speakers. And that's because technology's come a long way. The speaker in themselves are not nearly as heavy as they used to be. The cabinetry itself is made out of different materials now, so it's not quite as wood. It's not quite as heavy. And also now we have the powered speaker. So the power amp is now in the speaker itself. So we don't have to have that go-between anymore, that middleman of the power amp. There's still systems that use power amps, but more and more and more often you're coming across these self-powered speakers, which is great because they're lightweight and they sound incredible. We used to have what was called speaker cable, which was basically like your 1/4-inch connector, like a guitar cable connection, kind of basically the same thing. There are some other speaker cables and speaker connections, but that was kind of the big one for a long time. And a speaker cable would be a little thicker than a regular cable. And it's important, it was important, that you not use a guitar cable as a speaker cable and kind of vice versa. It could be done, but it was not generally a good idea. In an emergency, maybe, but generally we don't want to do that kind of thing. So now we have the powered speakers, and in that case, and we don't have the power amp anymore, so we don't necessarily have speaker cables anymore. What we have instead are the mic cables. The mic cable of old, which is also known as the XLR with the 3-prong connector, this mic cable here, has now become, specifically with our system, also the speaker cable. So this cabling has 2 jobs. It can be a mic cable, or it can be, with our system, it can be a speaker cable. All right. So I'm going to hook them up real quick. I'm going to just leave the camera there so you can kind of follow as I go. So I will plug into this speaker first. Let's look at the connection. Okay, so we have 2 separate channels, and then we have an auxiliary channel here, right? So we're going to plug in to our channel here. We'll just go ahead and we can plug into 2 channels, and it can just plug directly in, or we can plug in from the PA. So we have our 3-prong, which is going to go in to channel 1 here. And we're going to plug it into our mixer speaker outputs right here. We have left and right, and I'm going to call this the left side speaker. If you're facing the stage, it's a speaker on the left hand side, and if you're running the mixing board here, it's going to be to your left. So I'm going to put that right here. So we got middle prong down. So we want middle prong down with our lock connector up. That's generally the way they go. And lock it into place until you hear that click. Okay, now we're going to take the other end of our cable to plug in our speaker on the right-hand side of the room here into the right channel. All right, so we have left and we have right. And that concept comes in when we talk about the panning left and panning right. So when we talk about the board, we'll talk about that. Okay, and now I'm going to plug in my right-hand speaker there. Lock up, listen for the click. Okay, everything's plugged in. So the monitors are the part of the PA system that feeds back the signal to us on stage, because typically the PA speakers are in front of the band, so you really can't hear them. So we need what they call a monitor system so that we can monitor the sound. And they go on what's called an auxiliary channel. So on the board, and we'll go over this again too, the aux in the green, that's basically their volume for each of those channels. How much of that channel you put in the monitor. So the monitors can have a full mix, or they can just be a personal monitor. So for instance, a singer can have a monitor on them, and with just their vocals in it, nothing else, because that's all they want to hear. And then the drummer, he might have a monitor that's got drums, vocals, and maybe some bass guitar in it, or whatever they want. It can be a personalized thing. Now, with these monitor system setups, especially ours, once again, we have the same powered speakers that we're using for our mains. Typically, we used to have outputs for our monitor signal, which would go to the power amp, and then from the power amp they break out into the speakers. And once again, you could have a stereo signal. You can still do that, but with our School of Rock system here, it's a little bit more stripped down, a little bit easier. So we still have our monitor out signal, but it's going to come from one of the 1/4 inch stereo cables. And when I say 1/4 inch, I mean basically a guitar cable like that. And it's called 1/4 inch because that little connector there is a 1/4 inch. The little connectors that you have for your iPods and stuff like that, the little mini earbuds, that's called an 1/8 inch connector, and this is a 1/4 inch connector, and it's a stereo connector. All right, and so we're going to plug that into what's called our monitor send, and that's right here at the top of the board. Ready to move? So monitor send is right there. We're going to plug it in. It's sending that monitor signal. So unfortunately, there is no left and right signal from this. It's just one signal, and it is a stereo signal. So later, if we had a power amp, we could possibly split it left and right, but we don't have one. So this cable goes from the monitor send of our board. We've run our cable into our channel for our monitors, and this is only one monitor. We have to get to the other monitor. And in this one, instead of running a separate cable, because we don't have a left and a right, we only have the one monitor out, the one send, which sends the signal. What we have to do then is we have to use the loop section of the speaker, and that's just going to create a loop. So this signal from our PA system, from our mixer, is going to loop back out of the speaker, and it's going to send it over to the other speaker. And we want to have our speakers set on full range, as opposed to subwoofer. I talked about subwoofer earlier. It's just an entirely bass frequency signal. It just sounds like noise. So unless you're using one of these speakers strictly as a sub and you have another one running as a full range speaker, you'll basically just want to run full range unless you're coupling them. Then the bottom one will be subwoofer and the top one will be full range. So let's plug in our loop section. So we have connector to connector, and then this is going to run across the room there and over to our other monitor, which we're going to plug into channel 1 again. So we just looped our signal. That's all we did. All right, and we want to make sure that this little connection is on line, right? The way it is now, it's out. If it's in, if it's short, as it says, that's a mic. That's when you just put your mic directly in. If you have this on and you plug in these speakers, it's going to feedback like crazy. So make sure that that button is out and you were set on line, right? And I should have had this volume. Well, I'm going to turn the volume down now so that when I turn on the speakers and everything, there's less chance for a pop. All right, so now we've got our board set up, everything's powered, we've got our speakers set up, and we've got our monitors set up. So everything is ready to roll, and we can start plugging cables in for our microphones and our various instruments. So now we're going to set up our microphones. We're going to start plugging them in. First, I want to grab a mic stand, set that up, kind of talk to. I know it's not a difficult thing to do, but I just want to talk a few points about the mic stand and how to keep them lasting as long as possible. Unfortunately, everything's got plastic parts nowadays, so again, they do tend to strip easily. I think we've all had some bad experiences with these microphone stands so far. So once again, screw and unscrew lightly. Be careful not to cross thread. Be careful not to unscrew too much so that you don't take a backer nut and lose it. It falls off, it's gone. Then you can't tighten anything anymore. So anytime you're moving any of these parts around, don't just do it with when it's tightened down already, because that's going to strip these connections. You want to loosen it. All right, so like this right here, I'm going to loosen this screw right here. What this is going to do is it's going to take the base and slide it down. I've compacted it. I like things nice and compact. So I've made the cable, I've made the speaker, I've made the stand as short as it can be. All right, so unscrew this, right, not too far so that the thing falls out, and then slide it down to the end, tighten it back down, not too much. Open your legs. Right now we've got our tripod. Okay, now if we want to move this up and down, it's just a little piece right here. We just loosen that, right? Bring it up to where we want it. Tighten it back down. And this is the piece right here that usually gets screwed up because people, for whatever reason, don't think that they need to loosen this piece right here to make this move. But you really should, because otherwise it's going to script the mechanism in here. And then it won't work anymore. It won't tighten down. And this is a perfect example of a backer. So if I unscrew this other side too much, this piece right here is going to fall off. I may lose it, I may not. But if I do lose it, then I'll never be able to tighten this again. So we're going to loosen this a little bit, right? So that makes this action nice and smooth. There we go. All right. Probably going to be good about there. Tighten this back up. This is our boom stand, they call this. A boom stand. This makes it so that you can get the microphone out here, but you're not stepping on the feet of the mic stand. All right, and then we've got one final little connector here in order to make the boom stand eject or come back, wherever we want to place it. So I'm going to loosen that up a little bit, slide this out to about there. Flip it upside down. It was upside down. There we go. And then tighten it back into place, right? And then, of course, we've got our mic clip there. So once we've got our cable into our mic, which we'll do here in a second, you just place your mic in your clip, and you are good to go. There's one last connection for your mic clip, and that's this thing right here. For a screwdriver or a quarter or dime or something like that will work as well. And it just keeps this piece right here tight. This one right is kind of loose right now. It's kind of wanting to flop over. So we want to put a tighten on that so that we can get this not to be so floppy. All right? So once again, as with everything, and it's also got another great example of a backer screw that will fall out if you unscrew the other side too far. Can't stress enough how important that is, because you just don't want to be losing pieces. The more this one little piece, if you lose it, now the whole stand is, well, not the whole stand. You could replace the mic clip. The point is you want to be very careful. Now we've got everything set up. We've got our speakers in place. We've got them plugged in. We've got our mixer in place. We've got it plugged in. Everything's powered up. We've got our microphone stands set up and ready to accept our mics. So let's run those now, okay? I'm just going to go ahead and run channel 1 here. So that is our mic input. We also have a line in, which we can use. That's that 1/4-inch connector right there. But we're going to use, this is a better mic cable. It gives you a better signal. And that's what we basically use as mic cables. All right. So I'm going to run that cable. Channel 1. These don't have locks on them. The lock is inside there. All right, and then we take our other end of our cable here. Listen for the click. We're connected. Okay, mic number 1 is connected and ready to put on the mic stand. We've connected one of our mics to channel 1. We have on this board a total of 12 channels Some of them are split. You can do a left and a right signal. So for instance, that's channel 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we want to hook some of our instruments in here, so we're going to connect a keyboard to one of our channels. And for that, we don't use an XLR cable. We don't use the 3-pronged cables. We use just a regular 1/4 inch. Here's the 1/4 inch instrument cable that we're going to use to connect our keyboard to the PA system. There's a couple of ways that we could do this. We can run out of the phone's connection. We can run 2 signals, left and right, out of the output. Or seeing as we only have one, let's go ahead and run a mono signal. All right, so that means there's not a left and a right. It's not a stereo signal. It's called a mono signal. All right, so we can't necessarily run this left and right. So in which case, I don't know, maybe we should run phones, because then we can get out of one speaker cable or instrument cable, we can get a stereo signal. So let's try that. We'll do that first and see how well that works. Okay, we're going to take that cable and we're going to plug it into channel 2. And for that, we're going to use our line in connector right there. All right, so now we've got one microphone set up, we've got our keyboard set up, and we've got our monitors set up. So now we can turn everything on and we can test what's going on. So faders are all down, that's good. Board makes the pop, okay? The speakers are not powered. So when the board comes on, there's not going to be anything powered to make a pop. So this is okay. I can go ahead and turn the power on. All right? And now I can turn the power on to our speakers. And we go ahead and turn that master volume down just to be on the safe side. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and just turn it up to, I guess, halfway for now. Will be good. Maybe I'll turn the volume of the channel down. I kind of like things up in the middle until I figure out, if it sounds good or not. So we'll go ahead and put treble and bass in the middle. Volume, not quite. We're making sure that our line is selected, not our mic. Okay? And we're also on full range, not subwoofer. And we're at about half volume. All right, and we're going to do that to the other speaker on the other side there. So, turn it up. Turn this volume up. All right. Everything's in place. Let's turn these back around so we can hear them. Okay, now let's talk about the channels. All right, channel 1 here. Channel 1 is our microphone that we're going to test here in a minute. Let's talk about each section. We have our gain, okay? That's how hot the mic is. When I say hot, I mean how sensitive it is. If the gain is not up, if it's down low like this, you're going to have to really put a lot of force behind your vocals in order to get them to cut through, because the microphone isn't very sensitive. You have to get real close to it in order for it to pick up a signal. But as you turn up the gain, the microphone gets more powerful and more sensitive. And as people talk into it, you see this little green light, the level set, blip. And if it's on constantly and turning to red, then you've got too much gain and too much signal going in. The problem with the mic gain, it gives your microphone all its power and sensitivity, but if it's too loud, first of all, it's going to pick up everything around it because it's super duper sensitive now. And it's just picking everything up. And that's where your feedback comes from. So that's why when I'm telling you guys you got to sing into the mic and really project your voice, you have to do that, because if I have to turn this gain up and the volume and everything up, then that microphone's not only going to pick up your vocals, but it's going to pick up everything else around it. And it's going to muddy up the sound, and it's also going to start to feed back. So we got to be careful about this gain thing right here. All right, so gain is different than volume, okay? Gain is like the gain on your guitar amps. It just makes the whole signal really, really hot and sensitive. Okay, then we move down to our EQ. 3-band EQs, right? We've got our high, we've got our mid-range, and we've got our lows, okay? Obviously, low frequencies is the bass, high frequencies is your treble, and you have your mids. A lot of people dump their mids out, but they actually add a lot to both vocals and guitar, and also bass, so it doesn't get lost in the mix. So you want to be careful of mid. It can give your sound just an odd tone if you crank too much of it up. You want a good balance of mid. You want enough mid that your signal cuts through but doesn't sound all, I don't know how to explain it any way than MIDI. All right, so then our aux, that's our monitor send. So for this channel, whatever is coming in here, lead vocals, this is going to determine the amount of that channel, this vocal channel, in the monitor mix. Remember how I said that you can have individual monitor mixes? Well, that's how you do it. If you just want you in the one monitor, then you just turn this up. Okay, then this yellow one, this is our effects. This board has a built-in effects engine, so it has 16 effect presets for your board. You can only use one at a time. If you want more than that, you have to have what's called outboard effects, an effect system that's not part of the board but is separate. And then you can start adding more effects. So with this preset knob, you can select the type of preset you want. You can select with this yellow knob how much of it you want in the master, which is your main PA system, this one right here. And with this, it controls how much of you have in your monitors. Do you want a lot of, usually you don't maybe want too much effects in your monitors so that you have what's called a dry signal, so that you're not relying on effects to make your vocals sound better. Okay, so if we want to adjust the amount of the effect that we have in our channel, we do it with this yellow button right there. Or we can have nothing, no effects. And then finally, the last knob we have here is what's called our pan. Our pan is what sends our signal left or right up in the middle in both speakers, or you can sometimes have all these different areas in between. Now, you'll see a lot of people will run everything up the middle. Not a good idea. What happens is you're stacking all that sound directly on top of each other, and it becomes muddy. I learned a trick a long time ago that you can run maybe one or two things up the middle, perhaps your lead vocalist or whatever, but some things you're going to want to spread around. And I don't mean spread around a lot like that. I don't know, maybe have your lead vocal right there in the middle, and then maybe have guitar on the left side, just off to the left a little bit like that, like it would normally be. And maybe the guitar, if it's in channel 2 here, which it's not, it's our keyboard. So if our keyboard, maybe you have our keyboard off just a teeny bit to the right, right? So now everything's not stacked directly on top of it. All right, so pan is actually something very useful. And then you can mute the channel or unmute it. And then finally, this is your master overall volume. We call this a fader. And when I set faders, I like to have them here at the bottom of that block, kind of like at the 5, so that I have what I call a little bit of headroom. So if I need more volume, I've got it. You know, I can punch it up a little bit to the middle there. And if I still need more and I want to push it and I can get away with it without feedback, that's kind of as far as I'd ever want to go. I'd like to stay within that block personally. But again, this is sound, not sight. So you got to use your ear, not what looks good. Okay?
The AC/DC front of house board.
Okay, we've also got what's called a graphic EQ. So each one of these little sliders is a different frequency. The bass frequencies are down here. Here's our mid. Makes sense because it's in the middle. Here's our higher frequencies. You know, if we crank these up too much, we're going to probably get feedback, so we want to be careful of that. And we want to be careful of our graphic EQ in general. You usually don't have to move them a whole lot. Sometimes it's just slight little variations. You can put this graphic EQ in either the main, so the main speakers, the main mix, which is where it is now, or if I punch it in, this EQ will affect the monitors. But once again, you can't have it do both. It's either in the mains or it's working for the monitors. And this right here, it's either in, it's being used, or if you push it down, you're bypassing the EQ and you're not using it at all. Okay? All right, so Now we've got our fader for our main speakers, right? That's going to power our speaker system. I'm going to keep that down for now. Okay. If we want to mute the whole entire PA, that's what break does. It mutes everything. Been a couple of times when I forgot that was on and I didn't know what was wrong with the PA, and it turned out to be this one button. So be mindful of that. You can also mute your effects. Okay. Last thing I'm going to connect here is the tape in, tape out, so that you can bring music in, and you can take it out as well from various devices. So for this, I'm going to, these are called RCA connectors. These little guys right here. Common stereo connectors for your stereo system. So red goes to the right, and black is going to go to the white in this case. Okay, so we have our left and our right. And that is our tape in. So this has a 1/8 inch connector like I was talking about. So the other ones, this is a 1/4 inch connection. And this is an 1/8 inch connection. And they come in mono and stereo. So if you see the two black lines right there, that tells you that you have a stereo cable. It's only got one black line, that tells you you have a mono cable. All right, so I can connect this to my computer here, and then I can run my iTunes through the PA system. Everything is set up now for our little example. We've got a microphone plugged in, we've got our keyboards plugged in, and we've got our stereo system plugged in, or our iPod, whatever you want to call it. In this case, it's my MacBook. And then we've got our speakers hooked up and our monitor system. So let's test everything. First of all, we've got our microphone here. I cleaned it, so it should be okay. And I got to turn up the fader, so I'm just going to put it up to kind of 5 there, 5-ish. And then we need to turn our main system up, our main speakers. So I'm going to put them up to about 10 there, okay? And then I'm going to test my microphone. Let's see if we have a level peak right there. See if we have a level peak there. All right.
Check. Check 1, 2. All right. No feedback, so that's good.
Now let's say I want to put some effects on there. Right now I have number 14 selected. 14 is delay, a medium delay. All right. And I've got that about halfway, so there's a good amount of it. It's going to kind of be pretty echoey here. I've got that sent to our master, our main PA system. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a lot of it in there just so we can kind of get an idea of what it sounds like. All right.
Check.
And then you also have to bring up the effects return right there. Sometimes that can create feedback too, so you want to be careful of it. I'll just put it to right there at 20.
20. 20. That's a lot of echo. So you can take that down. See? Just a little bit less. Let's go ahead and take it down into channel 2. Now, see, not quite as evident. Still there, but kind of in the background. Now, if you don't like the echo or how much it echoes, you can change the type of echo. You can go for reverb, chorus, echo, delay. You have 16 options. Okay, now let's explore the monitor. Okay, I want to turn the mains down so that we can just concentrate on the monitors.
Right. The monitors seem to be sensitive, so I'm not going to turn them up very much. And from the channel, in order to send the microphone signal into the monitor, I have to turn up the AUX. Hopefully that's not too much. All right. So now we should have a signal in our monitors. And let's go ahead and check our monitor signal.
Test, 1, 2. 1, 2, test. It's a monitor, let's put our mains in that. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Mains. And then we've got our monitors over here. There's our monitor. Okay. Now let's check our keyboard in that channel, in channel 2. And we'll then finally test our tape.
All right, so we'll drop the channel here. All right, or we can mute it. So down is mute on, up is mute off. Okay, now I'll bring my fader up a little bit. Okay, we've got gain up. Let's go ahead and put our keyboard stuff, EQ in the middle. We'll go ahead and take effects completely out. We don't want them, and we won't have it in the monitor for now. Now we have to turn on our keyboard. Okay, now we'll go ahead and test our keyboard through the main PA. All right, we have that signal. That's good. Go ahead and turn the volume down on that. Go ahead and take that channel down. I'm going to leave the keyboards out of the monitor for now. Now let's go ahead and test our stereo system. And we're not going to have that in the monitors either. We're not going to put any effects on it. It should only come through the mains. And in order for that to happen, we have to have our tape level up, right? I'll leave it down for now, and then we'll bring it up as we go. So let me pick a song. How about some AC/DC? How about one of our AC/DC songs? Here's Back in Black. All right, so I got to bring up the tape level, and then we should have it. Back in Black. All right, guys, that's pretty much the entire thing. You should be able to set up the system all by yourself now. I hope you had fun. Okay, guys, that's the basics on how to set up our PA here at School of Rock. I hope you learned something. I hope that you can put the system together almost on your own from this point forward, and you have an understanding, a basic understanding of how the PA system works. I'm going to turn it off now, and so you can watch me do that. We're going to do everything in reverse. Remember, the board makes the pop. So we want to turn the speakers off first, so that when we turn the board off, it doesn't pop. The speakers are off, there's no volume, so there's no pop. So speakers off first, all of them, monitors included. Turn the volumes down as well. I already turned the keyboard off. Here's your main monitor. I'm going to turn that off. I got my masters down. Final speaker here. Turn this off. Turn the masters volume down. All volumes down. Off. Okay? Everything's off, so go ahead and turn your volumes down. I like to put my faders all down. Or if you want to leave your mixer in place, you can do that too. If your band is practicing regularly and you have your system set up, you probably don't want to put the faders all down. And then everything's turned off, so I can go ahead and turn the board off, and it won't pop. And we're all done. All right, guys, can't wait to see everybody and rock out. Take care. Have a nice weekend. See you next time.